Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we are starting our first game plan videos. I guess that's a pretty awkward title. I guess we'll work on it, we'll improve it. This is going to be for our game that we played as Tien called BumbleRumble. This is the game in which Lucid is playing as Atlantis, and he's already started releasing episodes for that game. This game is a 20-player game with various people from Lucid's Discord and Patreon and whatnot. This was a pre-generated map, which everybody had access to before the game started. And so if you could know who your neighbors are before the game starts. And we have 8 thrones to win. Okay, and total of 1, 2, I forget how many thrones it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 thrones. Okay, so you need just over half to win. This is a test game. I forget if the thrones in game are the same. I think it's all of the level 2 thrones, so they should be the same, although the position might be a bit different than on this map. Yeah. Oh, and well, let's take a look at what nations we're playing against in this game. We had, all right, let's just click on all of them, right? So we have Archocephaly, we had Pythium, we have Man, we've got Ulm, we've got Marignan, Mictlan, myself as Tien, we've got Agartha, we've got Satis, we've got Pangaea, we've got Jotunheim, Vanarus, Bandarlog, Shinuyama, Phalegra, Phaecia, we've got Atlantis, we've got Relay, we've got Pelagia, and we've got Ys. Okay, so those are the nations that we're playing in this game. So let's go. Let's start this off by just getting started on the nation analysis. Let's talk about Tien. I really like this nation. So I've found over the years of playing Dominions 5 that I tend to like human nations and I tend to like communions, astral nations. I guess, I don't know, that's just what I like, I guess. So let's talk about this nation. I think overall Tien is a pretty strong nation. I think it is hard. It's a kind of high skill cap nation. So it is, it's very strong, but I think you do need to know a lot about the game to make it, to fully play it, to play it to its full potential. This is kind of true of a lot of human nations because human troops can be a little weak, although I actually think the human troops of Tien are quite good. And so let's go through the troops. Okay. So again, this is Middle Ages, obviously. I'm sure you guys figured that out after seeing the list of nations that we were playing against. So let's go through it. Let's talk about our troops. So we have some light infantry, some medium infantry, heavy infantry, and then cavalry. And then we've got Sacred Heavy Cav. So a nice roster. Let's start with, let's start with our ranged units, okay? We've got, Tien has, I think, some of the best ranged units in MA. So we have and the reason, first of all, is because our bows are composite bows, okay? So the only better bow is the longbow from MA Man. But otherwise, archers tend to have short bows, which are range 35. The composite bow is a range 40 weapon. So this is a fantastic archer because he's got a fantastic bow. And he's not too expensive. I mean, 10, 12 is kind of average. So it's not super cheap. You can't mass it, right? We're not talking like a Bandarlog, like monkey archers. But the rest is human troops, so often archers or ranged units can have pretty sort of less than average troops. This is a totally average human guy, 10 of everything, not super expensive, and to be honest, he has like decent protection and a short sword, so he's not super squishy. I mean, you obviously don't want these fighting on the front line, but this is a totally respectable, cheap archer. Then we have an Imperial Archer. This guy is just a more expensive version of this archer, But if we look at the stats, a few things stand out. So first of all, he's now got 15 protection instead of 10 because he's got this full-scale mail. He has 2 more morale, so he has morale 12. And also importantly, his precision is now 11 instead of 10. Now, the increased cost, honestly, is mostly resources. He's only 13 gold. So depending on how you're going to play the game, but you're probably going to have scales as Tien, some kind of scales. This is actually not too expensive to recruit, and this is a very strong archer. One of the things that you have to, we'll talk about this. Well, let's talk about it now. So in archer battles, okay, if you are fighting an enemy that has light armor, then you want to use archers. If you're fighting an enemy that has heavy armor, you want to use crossbows, right? Which, by the way, we have crossbows, guys. Spoilers. We'll get to those in a second, right? But if the enemy also has archers, archers tend to have light armor. So archers can just kill each other very quickly, very efficiently. These guys are archers with heavy armor, 15 protection. So if you're fighting an opponent who also has a lot of archers, these guys are excellent because you're basically going to kill their archers and they're not going to be able to kill yours. It basically comes down to that. Now, if you were fighting against somebody who's using crossbows, then maybe it's actually, usually you want to have archers versus crossbows because crossbows only fire every 2 rounds, archers fire every round. And to some extent, extra armor is not really useful against crossbows because crossbows are armor-piercing weapons, right? So it halves your protection. So, even though this guy has 15 protection, it's essentially 7 protection compared to this guy's 5 protection. So is it worth it spending all the extra gold on this guy? Maybe for other reasons. But, sometimes if you're fighting, a guy with a ton of crossbows, so something like Marignon, right? Marignon's crossbows are kind of squishy, right? If he was massing crossbows, you might want to mass cheap archers against that. So that's just in terms of how you're going to choose which guy you're using. By the way, once this guy runs out of arrows, he's got like a 15 damage short sword with 15 protection. Like, that's a reasonable melee guy, right? So very respectable troop. Finally, we have crossbows. Crossbows are very rare in MA. We've all got Alm, we've got... and even so, Alm's crossbows are very expensive because usually you get the sappers because the arbalists only shoot every 3 turns, so they're not that great. And you have Marignon and Tien. Okay, so we get crossbows. That's amazing. These are just like these Imperial archers. They're Imperial crossbowmen, so they have extra precision, extra morale, very good protection. And again, we have this short sword, although crossbows are rarely going to run out of ammo unless it's a really, really, really long fight. The only thing that's going to stop you from recruiting a ton of these is the resource cost, but they're not that expensive in terms of gold. And we've got this crossbow, which again is armor piercing. So any kind of opponent that's going to be massing high protection troops, these are fantastic. These guys are also, because they have the high protection, they'll do okay versus archers. In other words, you don't want to make these against archers, but if you have them and the opponent brings archers, you'll be fine, right? Because you can take a couple of arrow hits with this amount of protection. Okay, that's it for our ranged units. Oh no, I should actually mention we have some horse archers. Horse archers are bad, and the reason is that because they're on a horse, they have bad precision. And the thing you want your horse archer to do the thing you want archers to do is to shoot well, and these guys don't shoot well, so not very excited about these. Plus, they're more expensive. They're 20 gold each. Now you'd say after that they're like a horse on a lance, sure, but you can just get the actual cavalry if that's what you wanted. So I think horse archers here are a bad unit. Let's talk about our infantry. So we have light infantry, medium infantry, and heavy infantry. We've got there are two. Okay, let's talk about this. So we've got a footman who's got a pike. This is a pretty good weapon because it's length 5. And the way, just as a reminder, the way the repel mechanic works is that if somebody who has a weapon that is shorter than length 5, which is every weapon basically, tries to attack you, you basically poke them first. And so if I'm getting attacked, I actually do a little attack roll first with my pike. Okay. If I score a hit, then they have to do a morale check. And only if they pass the morale check can they actually do their attack. Now, these guys only have 10 attack, right? So repel mechanics are good versus troops that have low to average morale and low defense. Okay? Those are the two things you need in your opponent to make repel work well. So, and obviously short weapons, right? So if you're fighting against like berserkers, it's useless because they're going to plow through anyways. They'll take 1 chip damage, but they'll plow through anyways. They're going to attack you anyways. If you're fighting against troops that have very high defense, you're never going to get your repel poke out. Okay, so keep in mind is you have to know what troops you're fighting. You have to analyze your opponent's troops. But if we looked at, say, if I took one of my medium infantry here, right? This guy has a length 3 spear, which you might think is high, but if he was fighting a pikeman, he's got average morale. Defense 14 seems high, but a lot of that is the shield parry. The actual troop doesn't have a lot of defense. So this guy would get repelled a lot trying to attack my pike. So situationally useful, it's cheap chaff. Against certain troops, this is a fantastic unit to mass, but it's only really good against a certain kind of troop, okay? Next, we have the glaive-wielding troops. By the way, they're all called footmen, so be confused. Next, we have the glaive-wielding troops. This is your standard human chaff. I mean, look, it's 10. Everything is 10s, basically, okay? We've got it. This is the light armor version. We've got the medium armor version called the guardsman. What he gets is a tiny bit more protection, a bit more morale, a bit more attack skill, and he's a tiny bit more expensive. He gets the patrol bonus. Yay. And then we get the heavy, which is called the Imperial City Guard, the heavy armor version. This guy has 13 morale and 15 protection. And is only a bit more expensive in terms of gold, but more expensive in terms of resources, so it's harder to spam this guy out. What stands out with this troop is that the glaive is one of the best two-hand weapons in the game for like human-sized infantry. The damage on it is like 10 damage is one of the highest damage for like for just a regular two-hand non-magical weapon. Pierce slash is very good. It does extra damage. It either does extra damage or goes through armor well. And like this is 22 is this is a human doing 22 damage. This is like barbarians, okay? It's length 3, so you can even get some repels. And this is just amazing. This is honestly the kind of weapon that you need to use if you're fighting some kind of very high protection, like maybe an early game pretender, like an Earth Snake or something. These can actually poke through, especially if you have like Strength of Giants on these guys. So glaives are very good weapons. I would say that unless you're fighting, the only thing they don't have is they don't have shields. Okay, so if you're fighting an enemy who isn't really using archers, or who's using like crappy indie archers, go for these guys. You don't need the shields. This is an amazing weapon. The attack density is good. They're just size 2 troops. They have nice morale. Really excellent troops. Now, do you get the cheap guys or do you get the expensive guys? These guys are better. They will survive a lot longer with 15 protection. If you're fighting, the only thing here is we're human troops. So if your opponent can one-shot you, then don't get the expensive guys, get the cheap guys, because you're going to get one-shot anyways, right? So for example, if you were fighting like giants, you don't need 15 protection. The giant is going to kill you anyways, right? So you just get the cheap guys so you can get more guys and more attacks, basically. Okay, that's it for the glaive guys. We also have another kind of infantry, which are the spear and shield infantry. Again, same thing, light, medium, and heavy version. These guys have tower shields. So if your opponent is massing archers, then these are amazing to have. However, the spear is a very underwhelming weapon. If it's length 3, but look, it's 13 damage compared to this guy with his glaive who's doing 22 damage. That's like half the damage. This is pretty bad. This is a pretty bad weapon, honestly. So, in my opinion, this is not a great chaff unit. If you needed guys with shields to fight, then you should use this fellow here, the Imperial Guard, who's our sort of elite heavy infantry at super expensive. I'm being sarcastic, of course, 15 gold, so really not that expensive. 13 morale, heavy armor, so 15 protection. He's got the tower shield, and now we've got a real weapon. The Falchion, in my opinion, is one of the best, if not the best, one-handed weapon on sort of chaff troops, because it has you don't have malices to either attack or defense, and it's just great damage. 8 damage is like one of the top. There are very few one-handed weapons. Maybe axes do more damage, but axes are going to lower your defense. So, axe-wielding troops tend to, they pack quite a punch, but they also can die quite easily. This is a heavy armor guy. He's got good defense, good protection, high damage, just an excellent unit all around. Plus, he's a bodyguard and bodyguard 4. So this is a great unit to be producing constantly. And in some fights, you're going to just use them on the front line. And then later on in the game, you just guard your important mages with these guys, right? When chaff humans become less important in the battlefield, these guys are great as bodyguards. So really an excellent troop here. Now, finally, we have our heavy cavalry. So we have just a recruit anywhere heavy cav, and we've got our cap sacred. Let's talk about this guy first. I really like this unit. So there are a few nations in MA that have heavy cavalry. There's Man, of course. There's Ulm. There's Marignan. And there might be a couple of others that I'm not thinking of right now. Tianqi's heavy cav is sort of like a budget heavy cav. It's much cheaper than the others. The stats are a bit lower, like the protection isn't as high. But I think this overall is a better unit in the sense that for the money, like you're going to have more of these guys, right, than your opponents. So heavy cav is very good. Heavy cav murders chaff. You can expand with it. But in any kind of fight, straight up fight, heavy cav is going to beat most other troop types, okay? And if we compare this guy to like Ulm or Man heavy cav, it's almost half price. Now, every turn you can't recruit twice as many necessarily because you'll probably be limited on recruitment points. You can probably recruit a bit more, but if I was recruiting across a whole empire, I can afford to recruit, like in all my forts, a ton of these guys every turn, whereas that's just going to be harder to pull off with Man or Ulm or Marignan. So in effect, you end up having a lot more of these guys. And so this is a heavy cav, so it gets 2 attacks per turn, plus an extra attack on the first turn, right? You get your charge, your lance strike. The other thing that makes these great is they've got a falchion, again, that best one-hand weapon, I think, so no penalty to defense. Some of the other heavy cav has really low defense, and they're relying on very high protection. And of course, we have our hoof. So here we've got a totally respectable, it's a human troop. It's only 10 hit points. It's 12 morale. We've got, decent protection. We've got decent defense. This is just a solid unit. I think great value for the price. One-on-one, of course, it's inferior to the other heavy cav in the game, but you're going to end up having more of it. And versus, like, stuff, just average troops in general, these guys are super, super deadly. Very, very strong. Okay, finally we have our sacred unit. The Red Guard is a sacred heavy cav. So this is just a slightly better version. It has, basically compared to the other heavy cav, it just has extra attack and defense, okay, which is good. Extra defense, this makes it very strong. We've got good morale. We've got slightly better than average magic resistance, so that's nice. Slightly better than average hit points. The cost is basically what you would expect for a sacred cavalry unit. And we've got the same attacks. And we have the only special ability we have here is Strength of the Spring. Okay. This means that they have 50% more hit points during the spring, and in the fall they have 50% fewer hit points. So this can be great when your war happens to take place in the spring. It's very bad if the war happens to start in the summer and you're about to fart in the fall. So it means in the fall, these guys have 6 hit points. But in the spring, they have 18 hit points. So that, I think, is not a great thing. I'd rather they just always have 12 hit points. But anyways, that's what comes with these guys. So heavy cav are are a great unit for blesses, for rainbow blesses. I mean, they could take a very killy bless. You can be very flexible with these guys. We're going to talk more about the sacreds and how we would bless them when we sort of talk about the build that we're going to go for on this game. So if we sum up all of our troops, we have excellent ranged weapons. We have crossbows, which are there are very few of in the Middle Ages in Dominions 5. So some of the best archers in MA. I think we have some of the best infantry in MA with glaives and falchions with a shield. We've got excellent heavy cav. This is a very strong lineup of units for just conventional warfare in the early to mid game in Dominions 5. Our sacred is heavy cav is totally respectable. You can definitely do something with this if you want to. Okay. Since this episode's been going on for about 20 minutes, I think we're going to stop it now, and I'll break it up, and in the next episode, we're going to go through the mages. So I will see you guys then. Take care.